Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Raj Grover, CEO at High Tide, is not only Canada's biggest non-franchised cannabis retailer, but also one of the world's savviest, consumer-focused operators in the entire industry. Raj returns to the podcast, and we catch up on 2+ years of consolidation, growth, and acceleration.
Yeah, so look, the good news is that illicit is still sitting at 40%. As much as it hurts me every day, I still think that this number is a massive number that will come back in the legal fold. I am very hopeful that as the industry continues to mature, competition will eventually level out. The legal competition is, some of the pockets where things are oversaturated, let's say in Toronto. And then also the illicit share will continue to go down as the quality gets better. The prices have already come down rock bottom. We have very competitive price points being offered by the licensed growers and manufacturers. So, on that side, we're really good. So I'm very hopeful that the illicit share will continue to go down, making bricks and mortar cannabis retail landscape, legal landscape, much more healthier.
Raj, welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you, my friend?
Michael, it's great to be back and chat with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a couple of years. I think the last time you and I spoke together for the podcast was at the Retail Council's Cannabis Forum. But it is great. A few things have happened since then. Was that 2019? So I'm really excited to catch up. You guys have been doing such amazing things. So thanks again for making the time to chat with me.
Absolutely. I always say cannabis years are like dog years. 2019 to 2022 can make a big difference. And you know it.
Absolutely. Now, where am I finding you today?
I'm in Calgary office.
I know you well. Not everyone may know you as well as I, or they may recognize the brands, but not know enough about the business. So why don't we start about you? Tell us a bit about yourself, and then tell us all about High Tide. It's a really interesting organization. So help me and help the listeners kind of unpack High Tide.
Sure. So as you may know, Michael, I grew up in Mumbai in a middle-class family and started learning about business at an early age from my father. So, starting at the age of 14, I started spending many of my summers in his office, just learning more about his business. And as I come from a family of business owners, which is my father, my uncle, my grandfather, they've all been business people, all into export-import. So I've also always kind of have a very keen interest in business in general. I took this interest in learning my father's export business. And that's where I was exposed to international trade. And then I arrived in Canada with an ambition to start my own business and started my first retail store at the age of 22. And following that, I also successfully launched some other small businesses in Ontario, including investing in real estate. And then after that, I moved to Alberta and started an independent smoke shop called Smoker's Corner, and then organically built that chain to 19 stores at its peak, out of which 10 were franchised and 9 were corporate stores. We were always also the first franchisors in the space at that time, in the smoke shop space, to launch a franchise model. And then also in 2011, I founded RGR Canada, which is Valiant Distribution today. And at Valiant, we design, manufacture, and distribute consumption accessories. And then in 2016, I co-founded Famous Brandz and secured celebrity and studio licenses to manufacture licensed consumption accessories. Then with federal legalization of cannabis on the horizon in Canada coming up, I vended all of these operating companies, Smoker's Corner, RGR, Famous Brandz, into High Tide Inc., and took it public on the CSE in December of 2018.
Well, what a fast ride. And now, do you trade outside of Canada? Because I seem to remember that your core business also had U.S. presence. Is that, am I remembering that correctly?
Oh, we do now. Yes. We have major exposure in the U.S. through our e-commerce platforms at the moment. And we do business outside of Canada. And we are also trading on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange and the Toronto Stock Exchange Venture, as well as the Frankfurt Stock Exchange.
It's fantastic. I mean, I always tell people when they look at cannabis retailers to look at High Tide as an example, because you remind me of catalog retailers before e-commerce. You were in the space before legalization operating as a retailer and a manufacturer and private label. So you came to it with a lot of experience. You weren't just a startup that saw an opportunity. You saw that opportunity like a decade before, right?
I think that's what makes a big difference between High Tide and other operators. Michael, I find myself in a very fortunate position to have had this industry experience starting in 2009. This is over a decade of very valuable experience, which we were able to leverage in all facets of High Tide. And, just knowing your customer this intimately for this long has really helped us differentiate where we are today versus a lot of our peers. So, that experience has definitely helped us to be where we are today.
Yeah, it was always my sense that you had a very good grasp of the customer going in, if we're just speaking about legalization of retail cannabis, and we'll get more into that. But you already had a grip on the customer. And importantly, it felt like you had an idea of where you wanted to live and retail in that space. Because you remember back in the early days, there was some, we're going to be the Apple of cannabis stores, or we're going to be a bespoke. And you had a very particular brand identity and customer in mind when you went to market, yeah?
Oh, no doubt. And, that differentiation and that understanding of who our customer is how we tailored this entire High Tide ecosystem, especially the Cabana brand, Michael, because, I'm very proud of this very unique retail cannabis experience we have created through our discount club model in Cabana. But it's genuinely a makeup of all of the years that we spent servicing this customer that is passionate about consumption accessories and understands cannabis for not just since legalization, even prior to legalization. So we always knew who our customer was. I saw a lot of our peers going towards, we're going to sell to the soccer moms and the baby boomers and everybody else. But hey, they are not the ones purchasing cannabis today. You have to educate them. You have to bring them in the system. And I'm not saying that customer segment is negligible or we shouldn't be paying attention to, but let's not forget, who is your core cannabis customer? So we have a very deep understanding of that. And that is the reason why I see us tasting success today, ahead of our competitors.
Yeah, I often described you as having, and it's maybe not the right description, but kind of patient money. Like it felt like you knew where the industry was, as much as any of us know where the industry is going to evolve, and the consumer are going to evolve too. But you needed to start with a strong foundation, right? Because I get that sense from the stores that I'm in, that in how you get to retail. We need a strong foundation, and then we'll evolve as the market evolves, right?
Absolutely. Like we always knew where our strength was. We were designing and manufacturing, distributing consumption accessories since 2011. And we know the customers that purchase these accessories, and you need some type of accessory to facilitate the use of cannabis. So we leveraged that part of our business really well, Michael. If you go to our stores, and I'm sure you visited some stores, like you said, you can see our retail layout. It's very, very shoppable. It's very appealing. Yeah. It speaks to you at every touch point. And we carry, upwards of 500 additional SKUs than any given next competitor. And that, again, this comes from our deep experience of knowing the customer on how they shop. What do they prefer? What do they want to see in cannabis stores? Not from just a concept that, cannabis is legalizing in Canada, and it's going to be just another retail store. So, we could do it this way or that way. We did it through experience, through past experience that we gained from the Smoker's Corner setup. Yeah. We had 19 stores at its peak, and we basically serviced the most mature and heavy users of cannabis through all the consumption accessories.
Yeah, it was a very direct analog for what the market and how the market was going to evolve. So let's talk about the retail cannabis component, because you've mentioned Cabana, but walk our listeners through the scope and scale of the retail cannabis business today and some of the brands, and that's been evolving as the market has evolved. You've taken the opportunity to enhance the portfolio. Take us through that for a little bit.
Sure. So we've definitely evolved as a story. So, to give you a bit of a background, High Tide is made up of various subsidiary companies that have retail-focused operations in both bricks and mortar and through e-commerce platforms. We operate in three main business segments, Michael. That is THC, CBD, and consumption accessories. We are the largest non-franchised bricks and mortar cannabis retailer in Canada through our Canna Cabana brand, with a portfolio of 139 locations operating across 5 Canadian provinces, which are Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. We also acquired two of the most popular CBD brands in the US last year, Michael, which were Fab CBD and New Leaf Naturals. Both have been in business for many, many years, especially New Leaf has been a leader in cannabinoid science since 2014. And then we also acquired Bless CBD out of the UK. And all these companies, they all sell direct to consumer from their online platforms and third-party platforms such as Amazon. We also acquired grasscity.com in December of 2018. So we had started mapping out our strategy even prior to entering public markets. And we acquired grasscity.com in December of 2018. And then we followed that up with Smoke Cartel, Daily High Club, and Dankstop in 2021, positioning us as 3 out of the top 5 most popular consumption accessory platforms in the world.
Yeah.
So over the many years, we've secured almost 3 million customers in our database, out of which 80% of these customers reside in the US, giving us a great opportunity to sell THC products when federal legalization occurs.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And then on the retail side, I think your last partnership or acquisition was Choom, Corey's great business that he built up. But it's not your only one. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Choom was a really great acquisition for us. We again, I'd like to think that not only do we execute, we've also been getting some really good opportunities come inbound into us. So Choom, unfortunately, went into CCAA proceedings. And, we had the opportunity to take out Choom even prior to that. But just looking at the Choom portfolio and where the locations existed and the amount of locations that were not performing really did not make any sense, to take the company out at that time. And then when they went into CCAA proceedings, we were able to cherry pick, 9 out of the 17 locations that we wanted. One of them is Niagara Falls, Ontario. It's funny you mentioned that. I was going to ask you about the Niagara Falls one because I know the backstory behind that one, and that's the one I'm most familiar with. And it's a beautiful store in a nice mall off a highway. Like I think if there's a formula, they had a pretty good location there. So I'm happy you picked it up. Oh yes, it's a beautiful store, kind of situated with other outlets, which very much goes with our personality, what we're trying to do with our discount club model. And believe it or not, Choom and us were both vying for that deal with the lottery winner at that time for the Niagara lottery winner. We ended up getting the most. We got 3 out of the 25. We got Hamilton, Yonge Street in Toronto, and then Sudbury in Ontario. Yep. And Choom was able to pick up this Niagara Falls location, which has done extremely well for them. So for that to come back, life turns a full circle and come back to high tide. Okay. I felt pretty good about that. So we were able to get that location in Niagara Falls, 6 locations in Alberta, mostly in places where we don't have presence today. So that really worked out in small town Alberta. And then we also got 2 locations in Vancouver, which I'm very excited about because as you know, Michael, BC's been a tough entry for us. First, we had to wait a very long time because our business kept on evolving and had to pass all the regulatory hurdles in BC. But I am so excited to start servicing our friends in BC now and get to amazing Choom locations in Vancouver to start with.
Yeah, now I think there's also a bit of chop happening in BC, right? There's some disruption in the distribution happening. So it's never a dull day in retail cannabis, right?
Never a dull day. And you know what happened at OCS before that, just resolved that. And, there's never a dull moment in cannabis.
So, when we think about your ability, and I think it's kind of nested in our conversation, the strategy and the patience and the experience. But, when you look at the overall cannabis market, is it that the combination of those things, the operating expertise that has allowed you to kind of, not just survive, but also thrive? Spoken or asked differently. So, there's some obviously consolidation happening in the market. Not all operators can win. Is it those 3 things primarily that's led to your your success and your, I guess we'd call it longevity, though, relatively speaking, you're a newbie retailer, but in this space, you got a lot of veteran experience and operating experience. So is that what sets you as High Tide apart?
Having this experience, like we discussed just a few minutes ago, Michael, I think is priceless. We've definitely navigated through a few storms to get where we are today operationally, given the challenges of the broader cannabis industry and especially the Canadian cannabis industry that we continue to face as Canadian cannabis industry. So, I would say that the secret to our business success has been our strategic and innovative thinking and a very keen focus on what the customer wants. I keep coming back to the customer because it's a really important point. As we know and understand our customers since 2009, and we know what they like and how they shop, and this deep understanding of our customer has led us to even launch our innovative discount club model, which continues to propel our growth. On a monthly basis, we just continue to grow in every market where we exist, even on a same store sales basis, which is an extreme rarity in Canada, as you know, Michael. And this is all while our peers continue to face fierce challenges or they're slowing down. But, that is just not the case with High Tide. Yeah,
and these acquisitions seem to be, what would the finance folks call them? Net accretive, right? They're you're not growing for the sake of growing. You're growing to make yourself more stronger in the markets that you care about. Question for you. So, if we think about cannabis in phases, or let's say if you're a baseball fan, in innings, what inning do you think we're in right now? I mean, it's been a couple of years, 3 years since legalization. Where do you see the market? I mean, of course, it's complicated because province by province is a bit different. But in your mind, what inning are we in the retail cannabis space?
So the retail cannabis industry in Canada is definitely hitting saturation levels in most provinces in the country, Michael. It's surely a mature landscape here in Alberta, where I am, and also in Ontario, with also other provinces quickly catching up, like Manitoba and Saskatchewan. There's still opportunity, and a good amount of opportunity that remains in BC. But having said all that, there are still pockets of opportunity that remain in these provinces, Alberta, Ontario, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Ontario is still a big opportunity for us. We still have a potential to add another 30 stores, and we are very much on it. But the retail cannabis industry is no secret. We've continued to face competitive pressures, not only from each other, like legal retailers facing competitive pressures from each other, but also facing major competitive pressures from the illicit market, which is still approximately 40% of the total Canadian cannabis business. But I'm very.
Where do you think that'll set out, Raj? Raj, where would you project that could settle out at in the fullness of time? Like, it's never going to be zero in the legacy illegal market. But what would be good in your mind? Like, what number? Do you have a number in your mind that you would say, listen, the market is you said saturated. So at what point is the market saturated? Like, there's no more growth from a percentage. There's growth in where I am, Mississauga. There's no cannabis stores here. So there's obviously, as you say, not insignificant pockets of opportunity for locations. But when you think of saturation and maximum, from a consumption perspective, do you have a number in your head? How do you think of that?
Yeah. So look, the good news is that illicit is still sitting at 40%. As much as it hurts me every day, I still think that this number is a massive number that will come back in the legal fold. I am very hopeful that as the industry continues to mature, competition will eventually level out. The legal competition is, some of the pockets where things are oversaturated, let's say in Toronto. And then also the illicit share will continue to go down as the quality gets better. The prices have already come down rock bottom. We have very competitive price points being offered by the licensed growers and manufacturers. So, on that side, we're really good. So I'm very hopeful that the illicit share will continue to go down, making bricks and mortar cannabis retail legal landscape, much more healthier. So I know that, I wish I could tell you that, Michael, I see this drastically changing on the illicit front next year. But I definitely think that, every year we're going to make a solid dent into it. So looking into 3.5 years, 4 years since legalization, we've gained about 60% of market share from illicit. We got another 40% to go. So my educated guess would be maybe another 2 years or so, we come down to 15 to 20%. And that 20% is going to make a lot of difference, Michael.
And I guess it's also time, but it's also we need some regulatory support, right? Like in a province like Ontario where, the distribution and online, I guess we got a little bit of help ironically from the COVID era because we had home delivery in Ontario that didn't really exist prior to, right? So I think there's also those extraneous factors that I think we need to help push us where we need to be, right?
No, definitely. I think the regulatory landscape plays a massive role, in the success or failure of the industry and where the industry goes and how fast it goes. So, I would always say the governments really need to take Canada as an example. Other countries need to look at Canada's legalization rollout as an example and not make the same mistakes that have been made in Canada. And, to our defense here, we're the first major G7 country to legalize it. So, of course, we're going to take it slow and go through some hurdles. But, there's many, many lessons that can be learned from the rollout of recreational cannabis in Canada. For example, the excise taxes that are in play and how quickly do they come into play? At the same time, how do we treat cannabis businesses in comparison to other retail businesses? Another thing I can talk about quickly here is the edibles THC limit that we have to deal with at 10 milligrams, while illicit market can go up to 1,200 milligrams. There's no comparison to that. So, we as legal retailers end up getting 3 to 5% of the edible market share when the real market share that we see in the U.S. is sitting somewhere around 15% and heading towards 20%. So massive opportunities remain. The good news is companies like High Tide have set up their infrastructure. We've learned, we've learned how to fight the battle in a very tough way, and now we're ready for the international games to begin.
Well, I love it. It's definitely a glass half full, or the bong half full, I guess I could say in the context. I could do that all day. Let's talk about some product for a while because you're deeply entrenched in product. We've touched on it, but to do it good justice. I mean, you've got a depth of expertise in developing products. So talk about what's new and talk about private label products and what's the strategy and how does it fit into we get to a good, better, best, and what can you share about the private label product strategy?
Sure. So the quality and variety, that's available at the various provincial boards today has gone up quite a bit, right? As a result of this huge increase, as a number of licensed growers have increased, also the manufacturers and processors have increased. So, at the moment, I'm happy with the product quality and availability at these provincial boards that we have to buy from. It's not bad at all. But, the other thing that's really working out in our favor, Michael, is our 13 years of experience in manufacturing high quality consumption accessories, which is a huge driver that contributes towards our success. So, we've always we've always known that if we take care of our customer by offering superior quality products at great prices, we will eventually win and retain their business. And we've always stuck to this philosophy. And this is why, we proudly manufacture some of the highest quality consumption accessories, and we sell them at unbeatable prices. And then on top of that, we also own 3 of the most popular CBD brands that have customers love in the US and UK, with plans to introduce these brands in Canada as regulations evolve. I'm sure you're hearing Health Canada stand on CBD. They want to reevaluate that. And then on the second part of the question about our own white label, I'm also very excited about our recent launch that we disclosed of Cabana Cannabis co-branded products, which include pre-rolls, Pink Hawaiian Shatter, and gummies in the market today. And we also have an additional approximately 10 SKUs under development that include vape cartridges, infused pre-rolls, ounce bags, multi-cannabinoid formulations of THC oils and soft gels. So we have a ton of exciting stuff under development. And, we call these products our greatest hits, and rightfully so, because these products are tried and tested winners that we have cherry-picked from our Cabana Analytics data. We wanted our customers to know, to be assured of the quality and performance of these SKUs. So we are motivated to introduce the very best through Cabana Cannabis Co. and, of course, at unbeatable prices, which is really our theme. We're going to get you the best quality products at the best prices. And we plan to launch these additional SKUs that are under development in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario in the coming months.
Oh, fantastic. Let's turn our minds for a few seconds to the U.S. market. I mean, the New York State legalization could make that a very huge market. It's always easier said than done. How are you thinking about the New York market and the U.S. market in general from your perspective, from your opportunity for High Tide?
So, hugely populated states like California and New York have started to, legalize cannabis recreationally. I believe we are up to 19 states in the U.S. now where one can purchase recreationally. And in my opinion, full federal legalization is only a question of when, not if. But I don't see this happening for the next 3 years or so, as we know that the current U.S. Congress cannot get aligned on this issue, Michael. And then due to the regulated nature of the cannabis industry, brick and mortar stores are and will remain the primary source of cannabis purchasing for the customers, with e-commerce and delivery making up, I think, approximately 20 to 30%. Of course, this is just my opinion, of the overall retail pie when the retail industry hits its maturity in the U.S. So, although federal legalization presents a massive opportunity for a company like High Tide when it occurs, as we already have 3 million international customers in our database, out of which 80% live in the U.S., we can convert these customers into THC purchasing customers upon legalization.
Right.
But thankfully for High Tide, our growth has not been, and will not be dependent on U.S. federal legalization due to our diversified retail portfolio, that gives us exposure to a rapidly growing CBD and consumption accessory space.
Yeah, that's a super savvy approach. I mean, I was in the U.S. In July. We're talking to a bunch of folks in the retail tech industry, and they were asking, and we were talking about legalization. And I'm like, it's tough in the States, I think, because it's tied up in social justice issues, and it's more, if it's just commerce, the Americans would have legalized it a long time ago, right? So I think there's still a rocky road ahead. I agree, 3 years plus.
Yeah, totally. And, it's both parties want to do that. Republicans want to legalize, Democrats want to legalize, but they just can't get aligned on the social equity part, which we know will happen at some point. But the process needs to run its course. And I believe it's, at least 2 to 3 years away. Yeah. But, like I said, Michael, our growth is not dependent on it. And this is evident in our strong financial results, including massive revenue and market share growth over the last 3 years. For us, which has not slowed down. And I'm really looking forward to sharing our progress when we report our third fiscal quarter in mid-September.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So it's a funny question to ask because there's so much going on, but what's next? Like when you get together with your leadership team and you got the whiteboard out, what's next for you? Again, it's a funny question because you got so much going on and there's a lot of next already happening. Maybe we've covered it, but if you could summarize how, you're thinking about opportunities, what jumps to the top of the list?
So, Michael, as you can see, the action never stops at High Tide.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to keep our focus on our customers that have made us what we are today, right? By introducing innovative products and concepts, which we've always done through our discount club model, through the introduction of Cabana Cannabis co-products. And our customers have come to love these products. So we want to keep our focus on that. We also want to continue to execute on our business plan, which is to gain retail market share in Canada quickly. So at a very rapid pace, both through organic growth and accretive M&A. You've seen us do both, right? We've been building a ton of organic stores, and we've also been doing a ton of M&A, especially on the brick and mortar front. And this is to solidify our position as the number one non-franchise retailer in the country. And then, this one is a really exciting one for me, Michael, and our investors, of course. We also plan to introduce Cabana Elite in November or December of this year, which is a paid version of our Cabana Club loyalty program. Because, since we introduced our discount club model, our loyalty has gone up from 245,000 members to 700,000 members today, right? Wow. Just over 700,000 members today.
Wow.
And now we have an opportunity to monetize this ahead of our peer group. Some of our peer groups don't even believe in a membership model as they publicly put out these statements. Yeah. That is not the case with High Tide. And this opportunity is, again, straight to our bottom line, Michael. So super excited about that.
Well, that's a great strategy because you walk in the footsteps of those who provide outsized benefits for that paid loyalty program. That would you call it the elite, right? That's where, your knowledge, decades of knowledge of the consumer says, here's what they'll actually want to pay for. And,
absolutely.
That things, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do with our elite model, Michael, is we're not going to take anything away from our current members. But we're going to give so much more to our elite members. So stay tuned for that, because, we will be disclosing a bit on that on the earnings call that is coming up in mid-September. Then, and again, last but not least, Michael, M&A is in our DNA, and we always have a robust pipeline of great businesses, that we can add to our portfolio. So we put some of these deals on ice for now because of our equity prices, just like everybody else has taken a huge beating. Yeah. But as our equity prices recover, we'll be back at it.
I love that. M&A is in our DNA. Is that written above your desk or somewhere in the boardroom? I love that statement.
No, that was very spontaneous, but it really is.
All right. Hey, listen, this has been awesome. It was wonderful to catch up with you. Congratulations on your success, and I wish you much continued success. And here's a fun fact: you're the third grower that's been on the podcast in 6 months. I interviewed Mohit from Sobeys and Tan Beer from Pet Value. So you're well represented here on the Voice of Retail podcast.
The grower clan is well represented. I'm going to have to look up the other two growers for sure. But thank you so much, Michael, for having me here. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks for tuning into this special episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and click and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically twice a week. And check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Conversations with Commerce Next podcast, and the Food Professor podcast with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my all-new YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of M.E. LeBlanc Company and Maven Media. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Have a safe week, everyone.